That's where you're supposed to come in and say something when I burp, Drew.
Oh, I took a sip of my beer instead.
Let's start with quarterback, Drew. I'll go first, and then we'll kick it over to you. At the top end, who should you consider? Let's say you have one of the first quarterbacks off the board, and don't draft him with your first-round pick. Don't draft him with your second-round pick. Probably not even your third-round pick. But if you're going to spend the capital, if you're going to go after your quarterback because you want to have the guy that's going to be different, you know who I want you to take? I want you to take Lamar Jackson. And the reason I want you to do it is most normal scoring scores quarterback rushing the same as running back rushing. And Lamar is the best runner in football. Now, if you have the choice between him and a couple other guys, there are a few other guys in the average draft position that finish better than him, guys like Patrick Mahomes, guys like Josh Allen. The reason I want you to take Lamar is those guys all finished with the number 1 seed last year. The Ravens finished 3rd. The difference here is going to be the talent that they wind up playing themselves against. The tougher schedule might be the difference at quarterback when you see the Ravens, who are much improved now that they're healthy, bullying some of these other third teams in the division in the AFC. Because the AFC is about to be murderer's row. Take Lamar Jackson and hope his weaker schedule is the difference between guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I'm not going to say Ryan Tannehill because the Titans never throw enough for you to take him. But other quarterbacks that finished in higher spots are going to struggle more because they play tougher competition.
I obviously am not going to argue with the fact that Lamar Jackson is a great fantasy pickup. I mean, 2 years ago, I took him and won my league with him, purely on the fact that he was running the ball consistently. I'm actually gonna, I'm gonna say no to him, and the only reason I'm gonna say that is because I think that the Ravens realized that they have to put the ball in other people's hands to keep Lamar Jackson healthy. Last year was a struggle without him on the field, and they're gonna go, hey, we're not winning games without him on the field. So, yes, he'll run. Yes, he'll get his opportunities. But I still think with the running backs now coming in healthy this year, I think you're going to see a lot of balls going through the running backs' hands, and that's where you're going to get your yards in the Ravens' offense. I'm actually going to go Kyler Murray. I think with DeAndre Hopkins being out, they're still going to try to throw the ball. And without having that number 1 dominant receiver on the field, I think that a lot of these receivers are going to be covered, and I think it's going to allow Kyler Murray to break out of that pocket. Maybe this is like, if you could somehow spin this, you play Kyler Murray like the first half of the season and then throw Lamar Jackson in the back half of the season. I know that's not going to happen, but I really like Kyler Murray at the beginning of the year. I think they're going to rely on him a lot to push that ball down the field, and it's going to rely on his legs to get there.
I like Kyler.
He doesn't have a dominant run game like the Ravens have.
Right, and he has better wide receivers historically than what the Ravens have right now. But I think the Ravens' tight ends are going to be good enough. Another guy that you should watch, I'm going to jump the shark here a little bit for tight end. I have like 3 sleeper tight ends you should take a look at. Isaiah Likely. If something happens to Mark Andrews, you're doing a little bit of handcuffing here. But if you're talking like one of the end of the draft kind of guys, Isaiah Likely is basically a receiver the way he moves. He's like 230 pounds, and the Ravens have nobody at wide receiver. Somebody's going to have to catch this football. Mark Andrews is a beast. You know that. I know that. He's probably the second tight end off the board this year since George Kittle can't be relied on out there in San Fran because they never seem to go to him enough. Between Andrews and Isaiah Likely, you're going to have at least enough of a passing option, I think, to just push the ball down the field for the Ravens to open things up for Lamar Jackson. The thing I don't like about Kyler Murray, Drew, this flame out, and when things get to the nitty-gritty, the Cardinals always seem to crash and burn. And I think part of it is because of Kyler Murray's size. I think the hits kind of accumulate on him a little bit more. He gets hurt a little bit more, banged up a little bit more, whatever you want to call it. The Cardinals always seem to flame out when you need Kyler Murray at the end of the season. He's one of those guys like, yeah, you'll go as like the first seed to your fantasy playoffs, and then you'll be a 1 and done or a 2 and done if you get the bye because Kyler Murray and the Cardinals can't be relied on late. I think that is a big issue for them. And to me,
that's why I said in a perfect world, you play Kyler.
You get somebody else. Yes.
Then you look for somebody else the second half.
So that is the reason I say steer away from Kyler Murray unless you're going to go and hit a home run. Like I think it was Travis who said he got Brady in like the 16th round. If you can kind of pivot from one foot to the other and go to Tom Brady for the last like 4 games of the fantasy season, that could be a Super Bowl. That could be a Super Bowl.
I got a question for you and Lamar Jackson, and you have been extremely,
critical of Lamar Jackson as a football player. This is fantasy. Like we're talking about different things here.
Right? No. How about when it relies on them being behind? What if the Ravens get behind? Are you excited to have Lamar Jackson sitting on your roster playing when you're watching the Ravens get behind. You have not liked his arm for a long time. I know you've seen improvement from it.
He's still inaccurate. And he has improved, but he's still inaccurate, everything else. But the way the Ravens have set their offense up, at least historically, since bringing him on, they have found a way to make guys open enough that it doesn't matter if you're not like pinpoint accurate. You throw it, Mark Andrews jumps like six feet up in the air and goes and snatches it out of the air, and it's a catch anyway. One thing that it will still benefit, you will never take that running ability away from Lamar Jackson. He has that running instinct that when things start to either go sideways or he doesn't see what he likes, he takes off. And from a football perspective, like if I was a coach, I'd be like, that bothers me. And that's why I still don't count him as like one of my top 10 quarterbacks, because he still has too much of the running instinct, even though that is what he does that is special.
Sure.
But that running ability doesn't go away when they're behind, because he's going to lean into that. That's all you care about as a fantasy owner. I want to see him run the ball for 100 yards every game, and that's 10 points right there. Throw me a touchdown or two, and I've made enough to where nobody's beating my quarterback. Right,
and I guess a lot of people could say that Kyler Murray hasn't been healthy either, and maybe they'll dial him back from running the ball as well. Taking that out. Take that away. Let's say all 5 quarterbacks that run the ball well, because we've already got a list of them, and you're looking at one quarterback that throws the ball well. Who's your pick out of that? Obviously, you got Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, you got Patrick Mahomes. Who's that guy that maybe no one else might be looking at?
Justin Herbert, because Austin Eckler is such a good receiving back and their number one guy. Beyond that, I don't really see them running the ball like super effective. They're not going to be the Titans or the Ravens where they pound the rock with a big back all the time. They're going to throw a lot.
Yeah.
And then when they don't throw, Austin Eckler will get some carries, but more than that, he'll get a bunch of catches. So if you're playing PPR, you want him. But reasonably, Justin Herbert is going to be chucking the ball all over the lot. I would say if I'm going for a pure pocket passer, let's say I missed my chance on the running quarterbacks, I want to look for somebody that might be a little bit under the radar. Take Justin Herbert. Let's see what happens.
Sure.
Especially with all those returning weapons.
I like that pick. I actually got 2, and I really can't pick one over the other. So I'm going to go with both of them. I'm going to go Stafford, and I'm going to go Cousins. Cousins, realistically, has always been a good fantasy starting quarterback for almost since he became a starter. If you picked him up somewhere, your quarterback's putting up good points for you for most of the year. And I think Stafford, with the way the Rams look and have looked, the number one option on the offense is to throw the ball.
Really quick, we talked about it before the show. We considered doing a show fantasy league, even though normally before that we've had like all kinds of interesting things to get in. If you're still watching the show and you want to be a part of it, send us a message. We'll try to set something up. I know, Drew, you said you don't have a whole lot of fantasy leagues this year. Maybe this will help you get involved.
0
as of now. We're going to get you involved.
People are scared of what this guy can do.
So if you're not scared and you want to play with us, send the show a message. Ivy wants in. Send us a message. I know Travis was asking as well. If you're interested, and Frank I think as well, if you're interested in playing with us, send the show a message. Let us just say, hey, let me know about fantasy football. And we'll, again, both of us are actually looking to expand because both of our fantasy leagues, or at least our paid fantasy leagues, taking a bit of a step back here as of late.
When you win multiple years in a row, everyone's like, I'm done giving Drew money.
I'm Mr. I'm always the bridesmaid. I'm never the bride man. I'm Mr. Go to the Super Bowl and then bad things happen to me. So I'm hoping to break the curse. Anyway, my sleeper for quarterback, Trey Lance. I do not like him as a quarterback, but we know if there's one indefatigable thing about his skill set, the beer's getting to me, about his skill set. We know he runs the ball. You, me, everybody else.
Don't you blame that on the beer.
We don't know if he can throw. We don't know if he's going to be a great quarterback with Kyle Shanahan. He's essentially a rookie coming in here.
Yeah.
But he's going to run the ball. And again, in fantasy, that's all you need for a lot of these leagues. I love fantasy leagues that kind of make quarterback yardage because I feel like it's easier for him to run the ball than it is for the running back. But if your league is 1 yard or 10 yards is 1 point, go take a running quarterback like Trey Lance that, again, put your faith in Kyle Shanahan. Put your faith in guys that have historically had a ton of success regardless of who their quarterback is. He'll throw the ball okay with Shanahan there, and he'll run really well because that's what he does well, period. I would take him as my sleeper quarterback right away.
Guys, just a reminder, if you didn't hear Jake say it, if you want to do it, please message the group. I see all the comments saying that you guys are in or want to play. Please message this show so we can get you in there and we'll get it all settled.
Yeah, like I said, we have like really foggy old man brains. Like you're going to be like, I want to play. And then we'll be like, who was it we wanted to play with? We don't. I know it's in text, but again, I can't read. Dre, do you have a sleeper? Drew, do you have a? I got between Trey Lance and Drew. Do you have a sleeper quarterback for fantasy this year?
No, I mean, I kind of think I've said what I believe. I do always think there is that quarterback out there that will outperform what we thought he would. I know probably people are looking at, especially Bengals fans, saying, where's our quarterback? Why aren't we getting talked about, especially with that receiving core? I don't really have one that's, I don't believe Tua is going to break the bank. I don't really think like Matt Ryan's going to like blow the stat line up. Obviously, I just don't really have that. Russell Wilson, I think he's going to have a great season, but I don't know if it's fantasy related great season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, how about Nathan's point? How about Derek Carr?
But I like Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr last year in fantasy.
This year, though, compared to last, do you like him a lot better? Could he be that sleeper for you? If you call it that?
I think a lot of expectation. I believe the expectation is higher. That's what I believe. And I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I mean, we've talked about this many times on this show. I think the expectation is to be higher, but what is Derek Carr's ceiling? Derek Carr has had great receivers around him in his time in the NFL. This for sure probably the best running or wide receiver ever. But let's not act like this guy's in like right into his prime. He is probably coming out of his prime. Still a great receiver.
Sure.
Still a great receiver.
Well, Nathan's all in on it. Frank is all in on it. He says he's surrounded by talent. Ian says Wentz is his sleeper as well. And Cameron goes on to say, Jameis, you crap on Wentz, I'll crap on Jameis. Here's the reason I don't like Jameis Winston. I don't trust what Dennis Allen's going to do. Again, defensive coach, new regime. Jameis got hurt last year. A lot of what ifs, a lot of question marks. I don't hate it if it's like the bottom of the draft and you got to take that quarterback that, it's your last pick or your second last pick or your third last pick, whatever. And a lot of the quarterbacks are gone. You're going to take a guy like Jameis because you don't know what's going to happen. I just don't know how much I'm going to rely on Jameis Winston with the Saints offense because they were like run heavy with him. So while he did historically be the guy that was like throwing the ball 60 times a game, I think when you talk about Jameis Winston now in the situation he's in, I just don't trust him, man. Maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I'm still jaded going all the way back to that draft where I was like, if the Titans take Mariota, I'm gonna be a Bucs fan forever. And then they took the only guy I hated more than Mariota, which is Winston going out, and it was him. I don't know if I'm jaded, Drew, but I just don't trust the Saints and Jameis Winston. Why don't you like Wentz?
Well, so when you call it a sleeper, does that give you like he hasn't a chance to be a great fantasy, like
has a chance to be the guy that like is the difference maker? That's right, what we talk about with sleepers.
Okay, I just want to make sure because when I think of like sleeper, it's like it's the guy that's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's your gamble, right? Like, is Carson Wentz the sleeper that like he figures it out in Washington, and now all of a sudden you're winning your Super Bowl because you have a quarterback that's scoring 6 more points than everybody every week?
There's not a chance. There's not a chance of Wentz. And the first thing I'll tell you is health. His health. To be great in fantasy, you got to be playing all 17 games, right? I mean, you need him for every single one. And the way that Ron Rivera has played or coached his teams, I mean, outside of Cam Newton, who obviously ran the ball, that made him a fantasy great that year, what other quarterback has done well for him where you're like, you got to go out there and grab Ron Rivera's quarterback because he's going to put up so much points?
Right.
When has it happened?
Very much like the Matt Ryan point here where Travis asked about Matt Ryan. They're just not interested in throwing that much. And that's what you need in fantasy football. You need the guy who's going to drop back 45 times a game if you can get it. The problem with Matt Ryan is Indy, if they're going to be able to beat you into submission by running the football this year, they're going to do it. So in a lot of these games, they're going to try to run on first and second down, and then you only have third down to gain points as a quarterback. So Matt Ryan will be like Mr. Consistent, I think. He'll get you like 15 to 18 points in most like traditional scoring. And then you're going to be playing against some teams where guys like drop 26 or they drop 12 because they have like the high variance quarterback. But the problem is the high variance quarterback is how you win your league when you have enough of those high variance games. So again, I'm not in love with Matt Ryan. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to be a great fantasy quarterback this year. Watch him be first because I said he's not going to be a great fantasy quarterback. But I think Matt Ryan, when you look at him, the days of him playing with Kyle Shanahan and just being that explosive guy are over. Now Indy is going to be more of a running team, and he's going to be the guy that when they need him to make that 6-yard completion on 3rd and 5, he gets it done. That's not to say he won't throw it deep. He'll get his points. But my point here is, will Matt Ryan be special compared to every other quarterback in the league? not in that offense. And I think Wentz is in the same boat. Oh, Ian says call him crazy, but Mitch Trubisky? What? He's not even going to be starting 6 weeks from now. Maybe it's a good 6 weeks, but
you know
I
what?
wouldn't start in week 1. We already argued about that for like 2 hours last show.
I don't even have that comment. That's how crazy that is. Facebook is like, no.
Zuckerberg himself censored that one. He said, we banned Ian too many times. Now he's just talking crazy out here saying you need to take Mitch Trubisky. Maybe for a couple weeks, because I think the Steelers will play him for a couple weeks. I would play him for 0 after watching Kenny Pickett do what he did in the preseason, but that's just me. I think when it comes to Trubisky, though, same deal. The Steelers are going to run when they can. And they have with Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator, they have a very, very short leash on their quarterback with how much time he has to throw the ball. You're not going to get those deep bombs very often. You're going to get more like, let's run a 4-yard curl on 3rd down when we need 3 yards and see if it works. So
we got Nathan saying Derek Carr. We got Frank saying Derek Carr. A lot of people, I think, are high on Derek Carr being their breakout quarterback. What do you expect from Derek Carr in this season? Because obviously I talked about it. I said expectations are high. I like Derek Carr prior. I mean,
fantasy-wise, I think it's going to be great, Drew. Fantasy-wise, I think it's going to be fantastic. Go ahead.
Here, my point is you're going to have your top end. You're going to have, Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, and you didn't even say Tom Brady. They're going to put up close to 30 touchdowns, low interception marks. But, the last time Derek Carr broke 30 touchdowns was actually in 2015. I'm looking up his stats right now. The last 3 years, he's just in 21, 27, and 23 with double-digit interceptions last year. I get that you bring in Davante Adams, but guess what a team's going to do? They're going to double-team Davante Adams. They're going to make sure that he is covered. And the first thing we're going to say about the Raiders that they have an issue with is their offensive line is not great.
Well, I go ahead. I will say this. I actually think fantasy-wise, the bad offensive line helps him because they're not going to be able to run the ball. I think the biggest weakness for fantasy quarterbacks is when your team runs too well and they say, we're just going to do that. I think Josh McDaniels will try to establish that, just being from New England, but I think eventually you're going to get to the point where you just have to throw your hands up and say, that's not what we're going to do this year. We like Josh Jacobs, but running the ball is like 40% offensive line and 40% scheme. The running back's like the last 20%. I think when we're talking about Derek Carr, just let me round it out, and then we'll hit Nathan's comment. I'm sorry. I think when you're talking about Derek Carr, he is going to be set up for a very good, high-variance year for fantasy football. He's going to have those games where he puts up 32 points because Derek Carr throws for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He'll throw a couple duds in there. You'll have some games where he throws some picks because it's all on Derek Carr, and he's under pressure, and he has the great weapons. You're saying, well, they add Davante Adams, they're going to double team him. Fine. Last year, that was Zay Jones, and nobody cared. Right? You're still better with that because you still have Hunter Renfrow on the other side and Darren Waller. And I think the big thing is before that, they doubled Darren Waller. Now it's going to go into this, who do we double? Do we double Davante Adams? Do we double Darren Waller? Or does Hunter Renfrow just destroy us when we double both of them?
Yeah.
So I expect a very good year for Derek Carr. I'm sorry, Derrick Henry too. Derek Carr. But I think he's going to have a couple of those games where, he's going to throw 3 touchdowns, but he's going to throw 2 to 3 interceptions as well that kind of offset a little bit because he's under the pressure.
Well, Nathan went off and said that 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions will all break his career record numbers, by the way. So he is saying
I'm going to bump it up to 19 interceptions, but I like where he's at.
All of those numbers will break his career records. Frank says then Waller will not be double covered.
Thank you, Frank. Cheers to that. He beat me to it.
Frank, I'll be the first one to tell you, because this is a Chiefs fan, you can't just have a tight end catching the ball. That is not going to work.
Drew is only saying that because Frank also said, unfortunately, he has the Raiders winning their division. So that's why he's turning against you.
Where did he say that?
Frank, he said that above a couple comments. Might not be on your side. It's on my side. I see it, Frank. Let's talk running back because let's get into the gravy real quick.
That's another one of those. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for blocking that comment out.
Exactly. The FBI told him to do it. Sorry, this isn't politics around the bar. I apologize. Let's talk running backs. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Because this is what, realistically, is probably going to be what wins and loses your football. Drew, at the top, I'm going to let you go first, man. Who do you like at running back?
I mean, do I have to, pick out the obvious, or do I just... You want me? You want me to pick
if it's
something
obvious, say it's obvious. I don't care. This is the top of the draft. There's going to be some obviousness here.
No, what I want to talk about is what I brought up during the pre-show was the disrespect of Derrick Henry and how he is not considered a 1 or 2 pick in any drafts. It's crazy to sit there and say that you would pick him at 7. You would pick a receiver before Derrick Henry. I get it. People are going to be like, well, they're going to set him back. He's been injury prone, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. How many times does the first pick in the NFL or in your fantasy draft ever really pan out to be that great? It is all based on what a team expects a player to be. I know people have McCaffrey up there high. I know people have Taylor up there high, and they should be if they're still healthy. But it's the same thing with Henry. If Henry stays healthy, he should be the 1 or 2 pick in all drafts. All drafts. The disrespected 7. Disrespected 7 is what I saw his average take.
You get that all out? I was trying as hard as I can not to interrupt that because when was the last time I heard a nice thing about the Titans come out of your mouth? Yeah, no, I agree. I think Derrick Henry is certainly one of them, but it seemed like a little bit of an obvious pick to me, and I said, what about the guys in the back half of the first round? I think everyone's going to wise up. I think everyone in our comment section, everyone watching the show is smart enough to say that Derrick Henry's probably undervalued if you're talking about the 7th overall guy. The only worrying thing, the Titans kept like 5 total running backs, if you count the fullback they kept. Might suggest that they're going to mix it up a little bit, but when you look at Hassan Haskins, very much a Derrick Henry style, like take the ball and run it, don't catch the ball running back. They also kept Julius Chestnut, again, real surprise pick by them, but same type of running back where he's a runner first, not really a catcher. And then they kept Dontrell Hilliard to be the 3rd down back. A lot of those guys seem like they're insurance for Derrick Henry getting hurt again. And you say injury prone, but he broke his foot 1 time, which is a non-lingering issue.
Maybe that was the wrong words.
Right, I know. I'm not, again, we're arguing semantics here, but Derrick Henry's had normally a very clean bill of health despite all the carries, and he broke his foot last year in something that is not usually a like recurring injury or something that lingers. It's just like one of those freak injuries that when it happens, you're out for 6 months, and then your foot heals and you're back. You're the same guy. Yeah. I love Derrick Henry.
If I remember correctly, it's not like a usage injury where it's like, oh, he was just being overused and this is like wear and tear. I think it was kind of a freak injury, right?
Exactly. It's like you step wrong on your foot and the pinky bone of what is your foot breaks at the top end of it. So, again, nothing lingering there. I love Derrick Henry. I love that pick, but because I have to go a different direction, I'm going to say Joe Mixon.
Dude, quit stealing Travis's thunder, dude. He said it way.
Travis just like lives in my mind. I'm telling you, he's beating me to every point here. And the reason I'm going to say Joe Mixon is because last year, the Bengals were like sold that even though they had this great passing offense, they were like, we're running the ball. On 1st and 2nd down, we're pounding the rock, man, even if it's 2 yards at a time because our offensive line stinks. And then they spent a lot of money to try to make their offensive line not stink this year. So if they keep that running mentality, if they keep that we're a run-first team sort of mantra that comes with Cincinnati football right now. I don't see them going to 4 and 5 wide all the time. I don't see them really being throw on 60 to 70% of their downs. They'll run first, and if they're able to do that, Joe Mixon is going to be the guy who's gobbling up the yards. Love him as a running back. Love him for the usage. They're going to run the ball. We know that. We know that's what Zach Taylor wants to do. Now the question is, as long as the line is better, will Joe Mixon get better as a fantasy prospect or as a fantasy player because he opens things up for the offense? Travis says Nick Chubb should be good with no Watson. I do agree with that a little bit, but again, the split is a little worrisome, number 1. And number 2, everyone's selling out for the run in Cleveland, right? Like the scary thing before had been that Baker could hit that guy over the top, so you had to back everybody up a little bit. It's going to be like engage 8 in Cleveland until Jacoby Brissett proves that him and Amari Cooper can beat you enough to win football games. So I like Chubb, don't love Chubb as much because I think teams are going to say, if we stop the run, we beat Cleveland. Aaron, good to see you. He says, as a Steelers fan, he will take what we have to at running back, no Chubb. He says he can't do it. He can't go across to the division and take a guy, even in fantasy, Drew. You got to be a mercenary in fantasy, man. We all love our teams. You got to be a mercenary in fantasy. If you like a guy, it doesn't matter if he's on the most bitter of rivals. You got to put him on your fantasy. I would take right now Jonathan Taylor if he falls to me in my fantasy draft, Drew. The Colts can kick rocks, but I'll take Jonathan Taylor as my fantasy running back.
Oh man, I think that there's plenty the nice thing about running back is, yeah, you definitely want to grab them early. You want to your first round should be very heavy back or running back heavy. You want to see a lot of maybe your top wide receivers come out like Cooper Kupp. I saw somebody early on said they took him at number 6. But what I like about the running back group is there's always going to be that one guy, and I don't know him. I don't. At this point in time, I cannot sit there and tell you, is it this young rookie down in in Houston that's going to sit there and have a breakout season, or if it's a guy, is it Henderson and Rams that finally gets through and makes a lot of moves, or is it Rashard Penny up in Seattle? But it seems like there's always that guy. Because remember last year when we were drafting, Jonathan Taylor was a great running back, but Jonathan Taylor was not the best running back in the league.
Right.
And so it was when the season started going, you're like, look at this guy. When you picked him up in the second round, maybe the third round, if you fell that far, you're like, I got the best pick in the draft.
Yes.
And there's going to be that again in this year. I don't think Christian McCaffrey's going to stay healthy. Alvin Kamara is a great for PPR leagues. You definitely want to grab him very high. But, Ingram is going to steal some of those runs, and Ingram's a great pickup as well. But there's going to be that guy this is why I love fantasy so much. There's going to be that guy that no one expected that you take, third, fourth round because you're like, man, I didn't grab a second running back. Man, I didn't grab that third running back because you need to start 3. And it's going to be the best player on your team. That's what I love about fantasy, by the way.
Right.
Just FYI.
And just for Indy, the one thing I will say as a negative for Jonathan Taylor, because we can't get through a show without me saying something negative about the Colts. But the one thing I will say about Jonathan Taylor as a prospect is, like I said before, running the football is 40% scheme, 40% offensive line. The Colts have taken a step back in the offensive line. I think they'll take a step forward with Matt Ryan and what he's able to do with Wentz there, so it kind of evens out a little bit. But I think he'll lose a little bit of effectiveness because the Colts have had so much changeover both at left tackle and at right guard, I believe. I think it's left tackle, right guard for them. I think Lewinsky was a right guard for them, if I remember right. They've had some turnover there, and if they're not quite as effective running the ball, I think it's more on the offensive line than it is Jonathan Taylor. But he is one of the running backs that, again, he's still good with the usage and the way they want to use him. They're going to want to pound the rock with him. He'll get the usage to make him a valuable pick. But I think we're going to see a bit of a step back from last year because the line isn't quite as dominant as it was last season. So I think there's something to pay attention to with Jonathan Taylor. That being said, I might still take him first overall if I have the pick, because I know how much Indy wants to run the ball. And I know they don't rely on those wide receivers, even though I like Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman seems like he's starting to develop. I don't think they really want to turn into a passing team. And when you're drafting running backs, that's 80% of what you want. You want the team that says, come good times or bad times, we're running the football.
Let's move into receivers, and we'll start that with Ian's comment. He says he thinks JuJu will be a great pickup with Mahomes throwing him the ball. I got a burp, too. Whew.
Mid-draft, I like JuJu. Like 5, 6, 7, I like JuJu. Just for the upside.
I am not in love with any receiver in fantasy with the Chiefs right now. I'm not in love with any of them, and I'll tell you why. Look at what Mahomes did every time he was out there. He completed passes to like 15 different receivers during the preseason. And I know it's a preseason. It's not going to be like that. Someone's going to have to get the ball a lot more than one time, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a dominant number one. But if you had to take it, JuJu should be it because he's already kind of seen that success in a role is expected of him with like 90-plus receptions.
I almost think it's a positive, though. I think forever the number one obviously was Tyreek Hill there, and now that he's gone, defenses are going to be a little bit more spread out, just trying to stop everybody.
Yeah,
I'm with you where I like JuJu, but
how well has that worked out for you to pick up Nicole Hardman or pick up DeMarcus
poorly?
Robinson?
I do it every season. I do it every year, and he just hasn't got there. But I'm willing to blame Mecole Hardman and less the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, fantasy-wise, for not being able to focus on the target. I think JuJu could be that guy, potentially. So if it's the 6th round, 7th round, yeah, I'm taking JuJu just to see what happens.
Well, yeah, the 7th round, but I'm not talking about like your number one receiver. You're going to pick in the 7th round?
No, there's too many other guys that are going to get the ball.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I'm with you on that. Nathan says, always take the rookie. It's worth the gamble. He just drafted Justin Jefferson in his rookie year, and his first 2 weeks were terrible, and he dropped him. And then after week 2, he became what he is now in the NFL. NFL, he says somebody already picked him up. That's tough.
Probably that is shot yourself for that one.
Really tough. But let me say this: historically, rookies tend to struggle. I would kind of go the other way. Don't take the rookie. I think Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson have been like two crazy 100-year outliers, both in like back-to-back seasons. So I think it's going to be like another 200 years before we see that again. Typically, receivers at wide receiver, it's a plus if you hit 1,000 yards. That might change a little bit because we have the extra game, but usually you don't expect the rookie wide receiver to hit 1,000 yards, number one. And number two, you just don't tend to get the touchdowns. Those two guys, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, like bucked that trend like crazy, and you won your football league if you took either one of those guys, probably. So, except for me, because I had so many injuries and I had Jamar Chase, but that's just me. Let's hit real quick, Drew, because I know we've been dragging. I know people have been hanging with us. We appreciate that, guys. You've been great hanging with us. Let's do our sleeper at running back, and then we'll kind of do a little bit more rapid fire as we push forward here. My sleeper at running back, when you get a little bit later, when you get like 6th or 7th round, because I wouldn't say go much later on sleepers on running back because they won't be around, Damien Pierce. I talked about him before. He's a guy that is going to win the job in Houston. They're going to want to run the ball. Lovie Smith is an old school defense and pound the rock kind of guy. Davis Mills isn't the guy that you lean on. They're going to run. Period.
He did.
They're going to run. And when they do, make sure you have the guy that is likely to win the job, or at least is the most likely to win the job with Damien Pierce. Don't go out and spend a second-round pick on him. Don't shoot the wad. No, I can't say that. Don't spend all your money or all your capital on drafting Damien Pierce. But in the mid rounds, if it's 5, I'd say, all right, worth the risk. If it's 6, I'd say, yeah, it's a lot better. If it's 7, I'd say you stole the draft. Period. Sure. Keep an eye on him. He is super talented. The only thing we haven't seen is him carry the ball 400 times in a year. So hopefully he gets that opportunity here in Houston, maybe 350. We're all happy. Yeah. Maybe we're winning leagues because we took this guy. Keep that secret between you and me.
I'm not going to be I'm not even going to pick a guy. I'm not going to do it. You know what I'm going to tell you? Pay attention to waiver wire. Pay attention to injury report. When that guy comes out and says, hey, this guy's busted, looks like he might not play, pick his backup up. You never know. I don't really have a guy. That's what I was trying to get to the point. It's like, I don't have a guy where I'm like, this guy right here, he's a sleeper. He is. I don't have him.
Can I give you a second one? Raheem Mostert with the speed in Miami. I'm filling out Drew's card for him here.
No, how can he be a sleeper? He's more than likely going to be the starter.
He might be, but I think he's going to share carries. So my point here being, don't take him second, but if you get him 4th, if you get him 5th and he drops a little bit, take Raheem Mostert with all the speed in Miami. Teams are going to be backing up. And when they do, running games tend to succeed when defenses have to push themselves back. Between Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill now they're at wide receiver, add another fast running back in the mix there. I don't love the fact that they're not going to be great blockers on the outside, but I do love the fact that they're going to be pushing defenders back with how much they are able to run the streak and the deep post kind of routes. If you can get Raheem Mostert, don't hate that either. All right, receiver, Drew. Who's your top guy?
My top guy? Cooper Kupp. How can it not be? My top guy?
Okay, all right. I didn't take the obvious. I was trying to I was trying to say, well, maybe I don't have the first receiver off the board.
Okay.
But all right, Cooper Kupp's fine. You want to go with Cooper Kupp? Fine. Cheat the game, Drew. That's fine. I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. I know I'm not much farther behind.
Cheat the guy?
I know. I'm cheating a little bit too. But at wide receiver, when we're talking about the top of the board, there's reasons these guys are up here. There's reasons you want them. Justin Jefferson and I think Cooper Kupp, well, certainly Cooper Kupp, I think Justin Jefferson are both worth considering. If you have that first round pick and all the running backs are gone, you're like 9th, 10th, 11th, all those top running backs are gone, maybe you take that guy and you counterpunch and you just make your receivers better than anybody else's in the league. The reason I like Jefferson is because with a new offensive coach and Kirk Cousins on a semi-prove-it deal, kind of where he's got another year and it's for a lot of money, but if he wants to make some long-term money, he's going to have to kind of put some performances together. I like the idea of the Vikings throwing a little bit more this year, and he's going to be the guy that they throw to first. Adam Thielen's great, but he's 33 or 34 years old. They still have Irv Smith, who I'm going to tell you to look at tight end here in a minute, but I think the Vikings, with both a mix of how bad the division is and how good he is on top of just the NFC being super weak, Kirk, all the stars are starting to align here for the Vikings offense. And that typically means they're going to disappoint us. But for now, I got to play the game on paper, and I got to look at all this and say, Drew, the Vikings might have a good passing game.
They probably will. Thomas, good to see you, man. Travis is again bragging they had Cooper Kupp at number 6. He says he is the one who got it. I know you're bragging, buddy. Nathan said his sleeper at wide receiver is Sky Moore out of Kansas City. I also like that pick because he's going to be doing punt returns. So the opportunity of him scoring a punt return touchdown is a little bit higher as well.
Depending on your league setup, some leagues do it where the defense scores those points, regardless of who does it. So make sure you look into that. But I like Sky Moore. I wasn't as high on him as some other draft analysts were. I was kind of like in the middle, where I was like, I think he's gonna be a good wide receiver. And then the Chiefs took him, and I was like, with where they took him, I was like, man, what a steal. So yeah, somebody's going to emerge from that Chiefs wide receiving group. You're kind of playing Russian roulette to see if you get that guy. I mean, who knows, Drew? Maybe we're all wrong, and it's the receiver from Green Bay, whose name also escapes me, that they paid too much money to. He's on your team. You should know this.
No?
Valdez-Scantling. Thank you. Maybe he's the guy that winds up winning the kind of Kansas City lottery of who's going to be the best receiver. What else is new? Of who's going to be the best receiver. So who knows? I think taking any of these Kansas City receivers and just calling it a sleeper, go for it, because you never know who's going to be that guy.
Yeah. I'm going to stick in the same division. I'm going to go with Denver receivers. Is it Jerry Jeudy? Is it Cortland Sutton? One of those guys has to pick up the slack of Tim Patrick being out. If it was my sleeper, if it was there, it'd be Tim Patrick. That'd be the guy that'd be like, this is the guy that you should be picking up that everyone else is ignoring, because he seems to somehow find himself open in the end zone. One of these guys, is it Jerry Jeudy? Is it Cortland Sutton, which is probably the more likely of the two, because historically he's just been better. Someone's going to get the ball, and it's Russell Wilson throwing the ball. It's no longer, what's his name? Drew Lock. He's gone. It is a better quarterback in Denver. Someone's going to be catching the balls that Russell Wilson is throwing. Those wide receivers might be worth a pickup.
Nathan says JuJu is the best wide receiver on TikTok, and the problem is that's why he's not in Pittsburgh anymore. My sleeper is Drake London. Atlanta's going to stink. Let's be honest with each other. Atlanta's going to stink out loud. I think Desmond Ridder will wind up being the starter before too long. Maybe they're 2-4 like it was when Tannehill stole his job. That would be some poetic justice for Marcus. Not really justice, because it kind of screwed him over the first time, but that would be very poetic that Marcus loses his job early enough that Desmond Ridder comes in. They're going to be behind in football games. They're going to have to throw. They're going to realize Mariota can't do that, and then they're going to go to the rookie. And when they do, rookies love their big targets. Kyle Pitts, everyone knows. Everyone's going to be targeting. Every defense out there is going to double to Kyle Pitts because they're trying to take away that top tight end that has so much flair around him. So go instead for the top 10 wide receiver that has a big body and is going to be very very quarterback friendly with the way he's able to go up and get the football. I like Drake London. He doesn't have the speed. He's not going to score you a bunch of score you a bunch of deep touchdowns. But what he will do is not only be a target in the red zone, but he's going to probably catch like 8 to 12 of these balls because Atlanta has like no wide receiver talent. So I like Drake London as long as he's healthy. I like him late in drafts to be that guy that could be the difference maker at your third wide receiver / flex spot.
Travis, Tim Patrick is out for the year. Ian says Marvin Jones
and that was kind of Drew's point, is saying like someone's going to pick up the slack for Tim Patrick.
Marvin Jones Jr. will be the sleeper out of Jacksonville.
I'm kind of on the Zay Jones train. Is that crazy?
Do we see a surgence in that passing game in Jacksonville? I mean, Trevor Lawrence
it'll get better.
Lawrence is, full of talent.
It'll get better, yeah. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is going to take a bit of a step forward. I think Doug Peterson's a very good offensive mind as well. I think Zay Jones and Christian Kirk coming in, they're better than what they had. Like, you don't want to pay what you paid those guys, but they're better than what they had. So yeah, they'll take a half step forward, and they'll be behind in some games. So fantasy-wise, don't hate that as like your pick. But as far as Marvin Jones goes, I like Zay Jones better, believe it or not. I like the guy that
hasn't done anything.
Except for Oakland last year. Remember, he was pretty strong through the middle with Oakland. And I will say this. I think you're going to have a similar effect. Everyone's going to be covering the $84 million man. I don't really love Marvin Jones at this age in his career. I think more than anything, the Jags are going to be looking to build for the future, and they're going to push some balls to Zay Jones' way to be that possession receiver. We'll see.
Sure.
Don't love any of them, to be honest. I just can't trust them. I don't know that they're going to get enough action to make it worth it for you to take in fantasy, they're okay.
Would you take like your fifth receiver?
Yeah. I mean, I think any of those guys are okay as a fifth receiver, and more on top of that, I think if you're in like a 14 or 16 team league and things are getting super deep, I like with where they're at, you're going to get them.
Somebody.
Yeah, and they're going to have to throw, right? Like, Jacksonville's not winning a ton of games this year. I don't think anyone's putting them 12-5.
You put them at 12-5?
No, I don't think anyone is my point. Anyway.
I got them 6-11.
Tight end, Drew. We got to get out of here. So tight end real quick. Not real quick, but quick enough. Mark Andrews. I'm taking the easy road here. I don't care. I'm taking the easy road. There's not a lot of good tight ends. If you have the pick, some years I do this as second pick in the draft, where I go out and I get Travis Kelce, or I go out and get Mark Andrews, or I go out and get George Kittle. Before. I don't trust George Kittle anymore. He burned me one too many times. But there is just value of having the tight end that can go hang 20-some points on somebody when everyone else is getting 6. That can be the difference to win games. I like Mark Andrews, and if he's one of those guys that if you come into the back end of the second round or you come to the top end of the third and you're getting the first tight end off the board and those running backs are gone, everyone's been diving all over them, Devontae Adams is gone, Cooper Kupp is gone, everyone's going after those marquee receivers, and you have the opportunity to get the best guy at a starting position, think about Mark Andrews. I like Kelce still. I like Kelce a lot, actually. It's almost a toss-up. But with as weak as the Baltimore Ravens have become at wide receiver, I think Mark Andrews kind of is going to push himself into tight end 1 for me.
I'm not even going to go to my number 1. I'm going to go to, just guys that you should pay attention to. And I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. Definitely Waller with the addition of Devontae Adams. Waller should find a lot of potential there. Obviously, the potential of Mike Gesicki with Hill coming there, what should open up for him. I'm actually going to go with Steeler here. I'm going to go Veluth. I always say his name wrong. The Steelers
Freiermuth.
tight end.
Freiermuth.
What is it? Freiermuth?
Pat Freiermuth.
Fryer.
He was one of my steals as well.
I think that you have always seen the love out of the Pittsburgh nation in their tight ends. I think about Heath. That always drove me nuts when I heard that. I like that player. I think this guy could possibly push into the top 10 tight ends and maybe just get to that 7th or 6th spot statistically, especially when you look at a rookie quarterback at some point in time playing this year. He's going to go to his safety blanket, and that's going to be that tight end position. Yeah,
I cheated, and I went with 2 sleepers. Pat Freiermuth was 1, so I guess you could have him. I guess I'll back off. My other sleeper would be Irv Smith for the Vikings because, again, where they're going to open things up in the passing game, they're still not going to get too far away with their talent because they don't have enough wide receivers to put 4 of them out there. I think Irv Smith is going to be really involved with this passing group, and with his ability, he's like a 240-some-pound tight end. Historically, not something I love. But between him and Isaiah Likely, I think we're starting to see this swing where that size guy that runs really fast can find his spot in today's NFL. I'm going to say Irv Smith is your sleeper tight end that really late might be the difference maker for you.
Ian says he's really hoping Hawkins stays healthy, that he's going to be a sleeper. And then he was taken by shock that I talked good about the Steelers. That's not true. I talk good about them all the time.
In fantasy.
I talk good about them all the time, just not this year.
Do you have any defenses you like?
Steelers.
Okay.
Rams.
This is the top end. I'm going to say the Saints. I'm going to go just a little bit different. I think the Saints are going to be really tough. And again, one kind of meta game that I like this year is when you're talking about defenses, try to get guys out of the NFC. Because I think they're going to have much easier schedules than the AFC, that it's going to turn into the AFC is going to be 45-42. It's going to be like a bloodbath. All these good offenses, all this talent going out there. The NFC, you're going to play Justin Fields and the Bears. I'm sorry, Frank, if you're still watching. You're going to play teams like the Lions. You're going to play teams like the Panthers after week 1 where they beat up on the Browns. You're going to play teams like the Falcons. You're going to play teams like the Seahawks. You're going to play teams that don't really deserve, like the Giants, that don't. They're NFL teams, but only because they were here for a while. I mean, You're going to have all these defenses that are going to have much better matchups out of the NFC. So go for teams like the Saints, or go for my sleeper pick like the Eagles on defense to go out there and realistically have a much easier schedule than anyone in the AFC. And hopefully, you're going to put up the sacks, you're going to put up the interceptions, and you're going to put up the stats that defenses really thrive on, like fumbles, against teams that are not as good offensively as, let's face it, their AFC counterparts are this year. Their AFC counterparts are this year. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell to stay up to date with all of our NFL videos as well as everything else we're talking about in sports.
We have a great community on Facebook already, but we're trying to grow our community on YouTube because we believe you guys can talk sports just as well as anybody else, and we can't wait to have those conversations with you.
So grab a drink, hit subscribe, come talk sports with us.